Welcome to Vets to PM's Military Transition Academy podcast, the show where we discuss how to succeed in transitioning from the military service to the civilian workforce. This show and the academy it represents helps veterans transition into meaningful, lucrative post-service careers. Your primary host is Eric Doc Wright, PhD, certified manager, military veteran, serial founder, best-selling business author, philosopher, linguist, and coach. Your other host is Jeremy Burdick, project management professional, scrum master, product owner, and retired Air Force chief, and the current COO of Vets to PM and the Professional Development Unit University, where we will interview veterans successful in corporate America and business to bring you nuggets of wisdom every episode to make you more successful. Next, let's introduce today's guest. Today's guest is an interesting one. We have David A. Baker, a native of Brevard County, enlisted into the Army after graduating from the local high school, and he retired 20 years later in 2005. David A. Baker is also a graduate of the Barry University School of Law with a Juris Doctorate, and he opened his firm with a commitment to helping the citizens of the Space Coast and providing quality legal services to his clients. David spent over 15 years serving the community as a law enforcement officer and retired with the Cocoa Police Department. During his Army term, he served 10 years with the Florida Army National Guard and retired as a first sergeant. He also lived and served in Afghanistan for a year, where he was the senior NCO of Force Protection for Combined Forces Command at Kabul and Kandahar Airfield.
So, JB, welcome back to the weekly podcast, brother, MTA podcast, man. I'm stoked to be with you again this week.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think we got a really cool guest. I mean, I started reading his bio and I'm like, wait a minute, this guy has reinvented himself a couple different times, kind of gone through some really interesting education. And then now's, I don't want to steal the surprise, but now is really applying for something pretty massive.
Yeah, and the reinvention, the transformation is, I mean, I met him at a mayor's breakfast, Brevard County mayor's breakfast. Thanks, Nancy, and the Palm Bay Chamber of Commerce, wink, wink. But met him at a mayor's breakfast and just, 97 seconds flat into the conversation, I was like, oh, David, I got to have you on the podcast, my friend. You got to talk to our peeps in Podcast Nation. So anyway, without further ado, you heard his intro. David, welcome to the Military Transition Academy podcast, my friend.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. Excited. Been looking forward to this episode. So just tell us a little bit about, just kind of set the stage for everybody. What was your service like? And then tell them what you're doing now. And then we'll start to unpack all the stuff that must have transpired in between.
Well, I went into service when I was 17, joined in the delayed entry program. Most people will be familiar with that. Right after graduation, went off to basic training. I did 3 years at Fort Carson. I was air defense artillery. If it flies, it dies. So, and I stayed in air defense artillery. So after I got out of the regular Army, I moved into the National Guard program. And there I was an active Guard and Reserve soldier for 4.5 years in a Hawk missile system that we had here in Brevard County. And we actually fired the first Hawk missile for the state. So we did that, did a lot of different roving sands out in Texas, where they flew us all out there for that field mission. Did a lot of things for a National Guard unit. We did a whole bunch of different things. I did that for about 4.5 years. They decided to move my unit down to West Palm Beach, and I just built a house in Cocoa. So I left the full-time National Guard program, became a Cocoa police officer, but I stayed in the reserves. And we transitioned from Hawk missile systems to the Avenger missile system. And I don't know if you know, but they actually used that and set it up for defense after 9/11 around Kennedy Space Center. We had live missiles on the rails and at around Washington. So we were ready to defend if anything came in. While I was a police officer in the National Guard, activated several times after 9/11. I was in charge of the airports throughout. I had 3 international airports in Central Florida that I was in charge of. And then in 2004, we got sent to Afghanistan. And of course, knowing how the Army goes, needs of the Army, 10 days of training, now you're an MP. So we went to Afghanistan as MPs. We did a year there. And When I came back shortly, I was the first sergeant of the unit at that point. So, and anybody in the Army knows once you make E7, you're really not doing your job. Because I was actually a repairman. I started as a Vulcan repairman, and then I became a Hawk mechanic, and then after that I was an Avenger mechanic. But of course, I got promoted to the point where I was a platoon sergeant, and then ultimately went to Afghanistan as the first sergeant of an MP company, which was interesting because they combined 2.5 batteries together, because a battery is a lot smaller than a company. Usually a battery's only got about 90 soldiers, to move to around 300 soldiers in an infantry or a MP unit, combat MPs. So did all that, got back from Afghanistan, and I retired shortly thereafter. So that's my military background.
So needs of the service, and for those of you listening, you know this if you're in uniform or you're a vet, and for those of you in CivDiv, hiring managers, et cetera, listening, what you heard David just say is, hey, we're trained to do this highly technical thing, but very rarely in our careers, regardless of how long the tenure is, do we ever do that one thing. We get to the new command, they tap you on the shoulder and say, oh, you're also this guy, this gal, that gal. And then we call them other duties as assigned, right? And then you do that for the 2 years you're there. And then when you show up the next command and you've got that experience, I mean, they tap you. So veterans are more prepared to learn things, not only highly technical things fast, but do it OJT and do it to the point of, hey, I can put you in the front line, literally in the field doing that stuff. So that's one of the things I thought was amazing about David's career, is he was telling me this all at the mayor's breakfast. And then, so David, tell us about where you're at now, my friend.
Well, I retired from law enforcement, and one thing, for the Army, if it wasn't for the Army, I wouldn't be where I'm at, because they paid for my college and gave me the opportunity to go to school. So the whole time I was on active duty and National Guard and a police officer, I was going to college at night school. Amen. So on the 18-year college plan, I became a lawyer when I got back from Afghanistan. I actually took the law school admission test at Kandahar, where it was the NCO of Force Protection for the Kandahar Airfield. And I took the law school admission test there. I started applying for law school while I was in Afghanistan. I got back in March and started law school in August, and 3.5 years later, I was a lawyer. And now I've been a lawyer for a little over 13 years. And I'm currently running for judge, Brevard County Court judge in Brevard County, Florida.
So JB, how many other barred attorneys, brother, do you think were air defense guys / MP / turn attorney, right? Is that not cool? Went from ADA to ESQ. How's that?
Yeah, I would say not enough would be my answer. I mean, what a cool story, and what a guy you would want representing you, especially if you're in a situation where, like, hey man, it might get gritty here. But he's probably seen grit before. He probably can work through that. Can probably put aside some of his past and present stressors to make sure that you're taken care of really well. So I think that's a really, really interesting story. And then on top of that, going for judge, just to back it up just a little bit. So Army, police, now attorney, and then you did a lot of this stuff while you were in service. So thanks to the Army for, I've been to Kandahar Air Base. It's amazing that they have the educational stuff on the base, even when you're deployed. So they're taking care of folks, even when they're out in the wire area. And then you talk about, using those and making sure you're harnessing a lot of that, I guess the things that they're giving you. Talk to me. Did you do it all through distance learning? I mean, that's a lot of schooling that you did in over a long period of time. How did you maintain that?
Well, the way I did is I went to night school. I actually never took a college class during the day. So I received my AA degree, my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, and my doctorate in law, never taking a day course. And that's why I said it was the 18-year plan, because I was in college for about 18 years.
Wow.
Because, the Army would deploy me and I'd have to withdraw from the class, or I'd have to skip classes because of deployments and different things. So I didn't have the opportunity to go constant. I just didn't give it up. It was kind of like therapy, the way I looked at it. I worked midnight shift for the Cocoa Police Department. And if anybody knows this area, that's a rather a rough department to work in. So it kept you kind of sane to go to school and be around normal people. Because when you're working midnight shift, you don't run into people that are in the mainstream. So it was helpful for me. It was kind of like my therapy. So I just kept on going to school and didn't stop until I was done.
And so now transformation, speaking of which, so running a campaign, going to be an elected official. So kind of what was the impetus for that? And what are you doing to prepare for that transition? Because David, what we see a lot is guys, you're saying, hey, I was on the 18-year plan. It's easy to find reasons why you can't get something done. There'll always be a reason why you can't get something done. And as we all know, the only easy day was yesterday, right? But in the Civ Div, nobody's going to do this stuff for you. Nobody's going to hand you stuff. They expect you to come to the field ready to take the field like you're already trained. You've already done the combine, like you're already ready to go. So what kind of preparation or what kind of mindset have you had to retool to say, hey, now I'm going to go from this thing I know to this whole new thing of being an elected official potentially?
Well, it's kind of the same way I've gotten where I'm at now. I just kind of put it in my schedule, decided I was going to do it, and didn't turn back. I never figured I wasn't smart enough to know that maybe I can't go to college at night school and become a lawyer. I just said, I'm going to become a lawyer. And it was kind of the same thing when I decided I was going to go to the police academy. You go into the police academy, you spend 6 months in the academy. You have no idea whether you're going to get a job when you get out. But you just make the determination, I'm going to do it. And, you just put your mind to it and you do it. You work it into your schedule. You make it part of your schedule and just go for it. And that's what I've done all my life. I've looked at it and said, I'm going to try to do this and I'm going to give it my all and do the best I can. Now, as far as becoming a judge, it's an aspiration that I've had all my life. I mean, I didn't want to join the Army. I didn't want to become a police officer. I ended up joining the Army. I ended up I enjoyed those jobs. I was good at them. But when I was 12, I wanted to be a lawyer. So I kind of came around full circle. And ever since I started this, to me, you want to move up. Like when you're in the military, you should be looking for that next rank. You don't want to be a career private. You want to become a sergeant. You want to move up. And to me, I think becoming a judge is where you move up from being a lawyer. And that's where I want to be. And my background is public service. My whole life, I've served the community. I've served this country. And I think I can do a lot by serving the citizens of Brevard as a judge. I think that my background is great for it. I think my experience are going to be very helpful for me when I'm in there, because I haven't just looked at it on a piece of paper. I've been there. I've been there when it happens. And I think that insight will just help me make good decisions. All judges have to follow the law, and that's what you're tasked to do. But you still have a lot of discretion that you can use. And I think my background is going to help me make those calls. So they're the best for the public. They're the best for the person that's actually in front of me, but for the public overall. And I want to get back to that community service roots. Being a lawyer is great. I mean, obviously being a lawyer is a lot better financially than being a police officer. I can tell you that for sure. But it's not all about the money. And I've never always been about the money. It's the ability to help people in the positions I've been in. And I want to get back to that. And I think, and I do that now as a lawyer. I don't want you to think I'm not just out here making a dollar. I think I definitely do help my clients, and I think I do them a good service. And I think I can just do more as a judge for Brevard County.
Selfless service, just at a greater scale or a higher rank. I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah. And there was two things you said that just to unpack, just in case the listeners missed it, was one, determination. Like you had it since you were 12 years old. You said, I kind of want to be a lawyer, right? That's what I want to do. That's my passion. That's what I see myself doing that. And then regardless of what got in the way, and I wouldn't say really being a police officer got in the way, it's probably going to make you a better judge. It probably has made you a better lawyer. And so it is a building block. But then the second thing, so determination, number one, the second big thing that I heard you say was I didn't look at it. I just put it in my schedule. I didn't say I couldn't do it. I didn't look at all the obstructions in the way. I just said, I'm going to do it and I'm putting it in my schedule. And when you put things in your schedule, and this is for all the project managers out there, the program managers, and really all the managers at large, is the things that are important enough, make it on your schedule. And if you put it on your schedule, you'll make time for it. Whether it's a certification exam, whether it's getting that next education level, whether it's getting that next rank, if as I was in the Air Force and going up the ranks, I put it in my schedule to study for the next rank or do the duties of the next rank, so that I was already preparing myself for that. And that's kind of what I picked up when you said determination and schedule, right? Those are the two big things. So, thank you for that. I think that's, well earned to point out is how important that is just through life.
And, it's really helped me. And what I need to put in my schedule now is an exercise regime, but I need to put more of that back in my schedule. But, that's kind of how I've looked at a lot of things. And if you have it, the mindset that this is what I'm going to do, and, soldiers have that, airmen, Marines, they have that, and they just need to apply it. This is what I want to do. Let's do it. And, like I've said, I was never smart enough to know that maybe I couldn't do it. I just did. I can do that. Let's do it. So I think everybody should look at the world that way, because you can get a lot further if you just say, well, I'm going to try it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but I'm not afraid to give it a chance. Let's do it. And so far it's worked for me. And it goes back to make it till you fake it. So if or fake it till you make it. If you're going to do it, do the best you can and try to go to the next level. And while I was at one of the things that I think that's helped me throughout this is that base, the military base. Because when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of discipline. I was in a lot of trouble. I did a lot of stupid things. Had a lot of fun, but that wasn't getting me anywhere. But the military put that in there, and then they did more, because they said, okay, you're going to teach this class, and they put you in front of 50 soldiers, and now you have to be the expert, and you have to look it up. And when you're standing up there, you can't be sitting there, half in it. You got to know what you're doing. And the Army puts you in those positions. I'm sure the other branches do the same thing. And I think they're very helpful, especially in this, as a lawyer. I'm in front of people every day. I'm in front of the court. I'm in front of clients. And, those are things that people take with them from the service that they can apply to real world. Now, I've done a little look at y'all and watched one of your podcasts before I got on here to get an idea of what you're doing. And the soldiers have those basic skills. And I think what you're giving them is, those specific skills. And they have so much that they bring to the table. And I think a lot of people just don't realize what they brought from the military. So
yes, it's deciphering what they already know and pulling it out and then giving it a civilian term so you can reinsert it down the road when you're in the civilian division, or what Doc likes to call the civ div. So I agree with you 100%. It's not smoke and mirrors. It's what you're already good at. We codify it in a civilian credential that you don't have to have that conversation with the hiring manager down the road. And it's just like when you go into a courtroom, they know that you know law because you're a lawyer, right? You've gone to law school, you've certified, so it's kind of the same thing.
What I think is amazing too is, a lot of guys, David, that we run into, so in 7 years, we've helped over 6,200 folks. So a couple repeating themes keep coming up. And one of them is, hey, I was the top. Hey, I was the company commander. Hey, I was the chief. Hey, I was the, whatever they were. They don't necessarily see themselves as whatever they want to be in the civ div. So for those of you out there in MTA Podcast Nation living in, what you heard David say is since he's 12, he's had this dream. Don't put that pressure on yourself that the very first or the very next gig out of your military uniform service has to be like the last thing you'll ever retire from. There's no career manager or detailer or whatever your service branch calls them sitting in Washington trying to serve the needs of the Army, Navy, whatever, while they're trying to serve the needs of the soldier, sailor, airman, Marine. It's all on you now. Now, to some folks, that's horrifying, but I find it quite liberating. And David is a perfect example of that, right? As long as you can show that you're parlaying what you did and what you know how to do into the next thing. Civilians don't care if you change jobs every 18 months. They want folks on a team that are going to help them win a pennant. If you can show that your experience with all those other teams has helped lead you to the point where you can help them win a pennant, they'll throw signing bonuses at you and sign you up to help them win pennants. They could care less where and why, right? You got to them. They're just stoked that you're there now. So, David, what an amazing story to illustrate that, let yourself off the hook. The next thing doesn't have to be the last thing. You can figure it out now. You're the boss of you now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all that. And I think that it's just been so helpful for me. I mean, when I look back, a lot of time when you're in the military just sucks, but embrace the suck, right? I wasn't infantry because I didn't want to go ooh, but it's still a lot of it. You look back, it wasn't fun, but you learn so much and you get so much out of it. So but it can be so helpful. And like being a police officer, I think that helps me a lot because you're dealing with people from every strata of society. And, your background in the military, when they throw you in a barracks with 90 people that you don't know and you get to shower together and live, elbow to elbow, and you get to know people from different backgrounds and different races and different religions. All those things can be so helpful if you have any type of interactions with other folks. Like, as a lawyer, I think it's helpful for me because I can talk to people and help explain to them what's going on, because the law is complicated, it's confusing, it's specialized, and sometimes they just need somebody to explain what's happening. And it amazes me how many people come and hire me after another attorney and tell me, well, my other attorney never told me that.
Yeah.
You should take the time and listen to them and talk to them so that they understand. And I think the backgrounds that you have, for me, the military, the police, when I was on the street as a police officer, I would look at somebody and I could tell when that recognition clicked, when they were understanding what I was saying. And that doesn't mean talk down to people. It means find out where they're at so that they understand. And as soon as they do, that they're understanding what you're saying, and you can do so much more that way. And I think a lot of people coming out of the military have that, because you just get thrown in with people from all over. You don't have a choice but to do it.
Yeah. So, I can't agree more. I mean, you talk about day one in basic training. I mean, I'm from Texas, my bunkmates from New York, all different races, all different creeds, all different religions, and we all come together as a cohesive unit. So later on in life, even if you only did one hitch, at a very minimum, you've had exposure and you can relate to the plights of all men, or at least most men. So I think that's super helpful, one, as a police officer, and then two, as a judge, to be able to put yourself in their shoes and say, hey, I kind of remember what it was like to be this young, dumb kid. Also this repair technician, blue collar worker. And now, as a white collar worker, I can relate with the different, like you said, social stratas, but also the different, religions and the different, just all different walks of life. We all have a journey. And that's one of the big things, currently that has been tell your story kind of thing from the military perspective. You have a story. And as you tell it, you begin to see the crossover, the bleed over between, hey, my story's not all that different. We both been to Kandahar. I've walked that same dirt and we got to do some of the same cool stuff. And yeah, it did kind of suck, but now looking back, it was some of my fondest memories, just in the fact that I was with somebody that understood beside me. What are we sacrificing today? I missed a birthday, I missed a Christmas, but I'm making sure my fellow man is taken care of. And I think it's that service before self attitude. And then that drive that you're bringing to the table and just showing people like, hey, this is a success story. If you use your benefits and you go get your education and you have determination. And we just did a different show, and it was all about staying hungry, right? And that's kind of really what determination is, staying hungry for that next goal that you want to achieve. I mean, you're living proof you can achieve it. You can do it. Just have some confidence. That's really cool. Really great story.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, when I was in Kandahar, it's force protection, we checked the wire and all that good stuff. And I don't know what you did there, but we got lost in a minefield in there.
Oh.
And I don't think I'd ever been more scared in my life. It was getting dark. And you know how they would stack the rocks to indicate the mines out there? Next thing we know, we're in the middle of a minefield, and there was an open fence into the wire. And I was, I'm sure you have stories from that place, but that one just popped in my mind when you're talking about that. We had a Humvee in the middle of a minefield trying to figure out how to get out before it got too dark to get out.
Oh, man.
But
so not only empathy, but think about that. That's what I tell folks all the time. Hey, I'm going to put you in front of a CFO with a project budget. Hey, I'm going to put you in front of a GS-15. Hey, I'm going to put you in front of the chief human resources officer, and you're going to have to brief them like as an HR professional. When you've been stuck in a minefield at dusk, you know what I mean? Like, there's not very much stuff I can throw at you in the civ div outside of like aerospace, defense, oceaneering. Like, there's some fields for sure where risk and loss of life and limb are still hanging over you. But very few jobs are you ever going to see in the civ div that will make you feel like, hey, I am not prepared to do this. Oh my God, everybody's freaking out. The color printer's out of ink and we got to go brief the CEO in 15 minutes. Okay, everybody grab a seat. Take a really deep breath. Where's the closest Staples? Who has a vehicle? Like, how can we stall the first 5 minutes of the meeting? Like, man, after what you figured out, that's not a thing to figure out at all, right? So, David, you're obviously a very cerebral cat. What books or TEDx talks or things have really impressed you either during your own transitions, because you continue to have them and remake yourself? I mean, I've been 7 different things in the last 20 years of my life, right? And they've all been very disparate. But what things could you recommend, either, having been the top or having been the police officer or having been the troop? I mean, any books, any videos, any things that you recommend that could help folks they could put in their own plan?
Well, I can't point to a specific book. I think TED Talks, I've learned tons on TED Talks. I can sit there and just watch those things and waste a day because there's so much information you can learn on that. So I think anybody should take a look at that. But I've had my most success talking to people. When I was in Afghanistan, I ran into a lieutenant colonel, and he was an AGR, Active Guard Reserve lieutenant colonel out of Chicago. And my XO had been tasked to go with him, and they were doing inspections around Afghanistan. We met for lunch. I met this man one time. I don't know his name. I can tell you he was a black guy with glasses, probably in his 40s. He was a lieutenant colonel, and he was a lawyer. And he had went to night school, and he had become a lawyer in Chicago. And he was talking to me about that, and that what he had made during the 6 months prior, and that he worked as a lawyer part-time while he was still full-time National Guard. And I'm sitting there talking, I'm like, well, I told him, I knew a bunch of lawyers as a police officer, and I didn't have the best feelings for him because I dealt with prosecutors that were brand new and didn't know what they were doing. And I dealt with defense attorneys. And as a police officer, you don't have a warm and fuzzy for that. And he just looked at me, he said, it's just a small little slice of the law. It's almost, there's so many other things you can do. And he doesn't know it. And if I knew him, I would have thanked him 100 times. But he is the person that made me decide right there in Kandahar from that lunch, the 45 minutes I sat there and talked to that man made me decide that I was going to go to law school. And, he gave me the inspiration to do that. And I know he has no idea that he did that. But because of him, I'm sitting here today talking to you as a lawyer running for judge. And I wish I could track him down, and I've tried, but I don't know his name. And I only met him one time, during that year. But so listening to people, it can be so helpful if you just listen to what they've got to say. So many people have so much experience that they can share with you. And people want to talk. If you give them an opportunity, they want to tell you their stories. And I think that's where I've gotten most of my inspiration, is by listening to other people and really listening to them. I mean, sometimes you're in debate mode. You're not listening. You're thinking of, what am I going to say to counter that? Try not to do that, because you can just gain so much. And that conversation literally changed my life.
And it will change your life and your family's life for generations. I mean, what a powerful story. I mean, I'm wearing a sport coat in southern, Central Florida, and I got goosebumps, David. That was incredible. It was incredible.
Yeah. What good advice, though, too, is like, don't always be thinking about what you're going to say next. It's okay to have a pause. One of the smartest generals I ever got to serve with, it was always so weird, because in every meeting, there would be this like uncomfortable silence, right? And that wasn't very long, right? That was only a few seconds, but it's just that uncomfortable silence. And what it was him really transferring from a listening mode to a talking mode. And more than once, he would ask people, so what question is it that you think you're answering of mine? And then you get real stunned silence, because you realized at that moment, you weren't even asking or answering his question. You were just rattling off at the mouth you're wasting everybody's time. So I always thought, I learned from that, and I was like, man, that was impactful. So that was me listening to somebody and you putting out the words that he was actually doing. Really listening is super powerful. So, I mean, I know we've kind of moved to the end of the book and some of the other stuff. Like what couple of nuggets would you give somebody that's transitioning that helped you? I mean, you've lived it, multiple transitions, but let's talk about the one from military going into the first civilian job. Like what was going through your head? And then how would you say that you combated that or bested that challenge?
Well, when I made my first transition out of the military, I didn't have a job, didn't have an idea what I was doing. I was on terminal leave. And I was just worried about how I was going to pay child support, so I didn't end up in jail because I wanted to make sure my kids were taken care of. But you also can end up in jail if you don't pay your child support. And I was just looking for anything. And a buddy of mine came and said, "Hey, I got a job for you." I ended up driving a steel truck up and down the east coast of Florida. And it gets to be pretty hot in Florida, and steel gets even hotter in Florida. And these trucks were loaded by hand by me, and the steel would burn through your glove, and obviously it wasn't where I wanted to be. This was not the transition I was looking for. I was an E4 promotable when I left, a specialist promotable in the Army, and I took a huge pay cut, and they actually want you to be at work or they don't pay you. So if you got to go get a haircut or go to the doctor, they don't pay you for that. So it was a huge transition, that I was not ready for. And that actually led me to go back into the military as an active guard and reserve soldier. So when it was time to get out the next time, I did some planning. I started thinking, okay, I am not going to get out and drive a steel truck and unload and load literally tons of steel, in the morning and in the afternoon to take this truck out. So I started prepping. So what I did is I started taking CLEP courses, and I CLEPed, 40 credit hours. And then I started going to night school and to get my AA degree, and I started preparing. And then when they moved my unit and I was commuting 100 miles plus there and 100 plus back every day, I started preparing for my exit. And so I made sure I finished up my AA degree before I left. I set it up to go to the police academy before I left. So I did everything I could to move into where I'm going next. And I think a lot of people don't do that. I think I actually had I had done the normal get out with no plan, and it didn't work for me, and I didn't like it. And hauling that steel convinced me that maybe I do want to go to college. Maybe that would be a good idea, because working in 98-degree heat and 100% humidity is not exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I started thinking ahead of time, and I hung in there for an additional year making that commute so that I could be ready when I got out. And I think anybody's listening that's still in, they need to start thinking about that transition immediately before their ETS date. They really got to have an idea. And if you're already out, you got to look for where you want to go. And maybe it might not be where you want to stay, but you come out of the military, you got a clean record. You've led troops, you've taught classes, you've got so many skills. When they convert those skills for college credits, they do that for a reason. I mean, like, I was an instructor in the Army, so I got 3 credit hours of speech because I went to the instructor course. And a lot of soldiers or sailors have done that, and they can use those skills, and they need to start thinking about, how can I use these skills and put them on my resume? And I didn't think about that when I first came out the first time at 21 years old, but when I came out again at 25, 26 years old, I had thought about that. So my advice is to start looking at what you do in the military and start thinking about how that translates, because there's so much more that translates into civilian life and occupations than you realize. How does teaching a class on how to put together an M60 and maintain an M60 have anything to do with being a civilian? What it has to do with is you have the ability to contact and talk to people and show them and stand in front of a group. There's, so many people are so afraid to talk in front of a crowd, or even more than 1 or 2 people. But when I was in, you didn't really have the option. It wasn't like you got to say, "Oh, well, I'm afraid to talk." Nobody cared. You're teaching this class, get up there. So use it. I mean, people just need to use it. The other thing they need to do is they need to look at their VA benefits. There's so many benefits out there that they may be eligible for. I made the mistake of not putting in for anything for the VA when I first came out, because I'd been in 20 years. I've been to combat. I wasn't injured. I wasn't shot. Luckily, I mean, I thought that was great. But then I found out when I finally went, I have allergies, right? I have chronic sinusitis. That's a 50% disability with the VA. I had no idea. Sleep apnea. I actually had surgery for sleep apnea at the Orlando Naval Hospital when I was 25 years old, long before I got fat. But that was an eligible disability. I had no idea. So I walk in there, next thing I know, they're telling me I'm 70% disabled, send me a check every month. I would have never, ever thought it. And it was a Marine I worked with, an ex-Marine, who pushed me to go and at least see. And if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have ever been able to get that assistance. And, that can be very beneficial and very helpful. I mean, financially, it's helpful for people transitioning out. So you got to look at the big picture. You got to look at what's available. And once again, listen to other people. I mean, that's how I ended up there, because my buddy that was a former Marine, you're not supposed to say ex-Marine, right? But a former Marine pushed me, and he pushed me more than once because I wasn't listening to him. And he kept pushing me till I went. And of course, at that point, I'm like, where do you want to go eat? I'm buying. Because, so they definitely need to take advantage of that. And there's so many things that they can use in the civilian world that they just don't know.
Wow. So David, I sensed it when I met you. You've been an inspiration. I'm sure glad you came on and spent some time with us, man. This is, we got lots of folks listening, and I don't know what they're going to grow up and do. I don't know what they want to grow up and do. I don't know where they're at in their life, but Yeah, what an inspiration. So I think you've paid it back and paid it forward. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, brother, but I mean, I know who I'm voting for my Brevard County judge, but anyway, Jeremy, if that's illegal, man, just take that off the podcast. But anyway, you got my vote, brother. I mean, what a cool story, David. JB, I told you it'd be incredible.
And it is. And I cannot even explain to the group and the listeners out there how important the wisdom that he just threw at you was, because he's done it twice, guys. Like, he did it wrong the first time and courageous enough to be honest with us and say that. I did it wrong the first time. I did not prepare. I took the first job they threw at me because I was nervous I wouldn't have a paycheck. Realized real quick, hey man, my gloves burning through on hot steel is not what I want to grow up to be when I'm, old and can't lift the steel anymore. And then comes back in, realizes immediately, hey, I better start planning for a transition. Whether it was the move and the long commute, for anybody out there listening, today is actually the day you start thinking about your transition, because nobody goes to the end of life unless, obviously you make the ultimate sacrifice with the uniform on. There's always got to be an exit strategy. It's not a full end of life career, because that's just not what we're built to do. We're meant to transition out of the military, reintegrate with society. And I think David's story is impactful. Like, that means start today. And I love it. Like, start planning for the transition, figure out what it is you want to do. Look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, what was it when I was 12 years old that I did want to do? How do I make that happen? That would be really cool. So thanks, David. I think that's, I'm with you. I can't vote in your county, but ultimately, I think if anybody hearing this would know that you can relate with many of the people who would stand in front of you as a judge, but you're also going to relate with many of the people that you've already served for, right? You've already said, I've got your back to everybody in Brevard County. So why wouldn't they say, he's got our back when he's up on the chair? It doesn't make sense to me why you wouldn't vote for him. And this isn't a political program, but I'll tell you right now, if you just listen to the way he talks, it's pretty clear that he's here to serve people and the community.
I really do appreciate it. I really do appreciate this opportunity to talk to y'all. And, I hope people can use this. I think there's a lot of useful information. I watched some of your other stuff. There's definitely useful information that y'all are putting out that can help people. I know that y'all have you help them train them and you help them get certified, but your podcast do more than that. And I was impressed by that. It's not just that. You're helping veterans, and I think they can get a lot out of these podcasts. And from y'all, definitely, I'll recommend you. There's no doubt. No doubt.
Well, brother, you're now in that library, David. So I really appreciate you coming on with us. I really appreciate the time. I mean, I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for all the inspiration, man, and thanks for the authenticity. I just really appreciate it, and am humbled that you would cut some time out of your schedule for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it. August 23rd, by the way. August 23rd is the election. So
nice.
It won't be in November. It'll be over on August 23rd. So if you don't vote the primary, it's too late. I'll either be the next judge or not at that point.
That's right.
All right, brother. It's on my schedule. I won't wait till November.
Thank you for tuning in and spending a bit of time with us at the Military Transition Academy, powered by Vets to PM. If we piqued your interest, but you want more details, please head over to the website vetstopm.com and see if we can help prepare you for a better tomorrow or a future meaningful and lucrative career.